Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in for this edition of This Old Garage. I'm Matt Martin and
I'm John Pinkerton.
And we've got an extra special treat for you today. Today we are going to be talking about what, John?
We're going to be talking about lime.
All right, we kind of got a lot to unpack here, and we're going to come at it from the standpoint of John being the average DIY. I'm going to apply lime. What questions do you have right out of the gate?
Why would I apply lime? Why would I apply lime?
Okay, simple. The reason why you would apply lime is because you have acidic soil. And just one thing I kind of want to touch on. Do you know what specifically makes soil acidic?
No.
Okay.
No clue.
Excess hydrogen in the soil is what increases soil's acidity. So when you hear someone say, I've got an acidic soil, typically they have a surplus of hydrogen in their soil.
Okay, so I have heard things. I want to apply lime. I've done a soil test. I know the soil test came back and said, you need to apply lime. So I go to the store and I'm looking at all of my lime options. What should I be looking for?
Okay, so on your soil test, you'll see at the bottom of it, it will make a recommendation for you as to how much you need to apply, and sometimes it will tell you whether you need dolomitic lime or you need calcitic lime.
Okay.
Do you know the difference between the two?
Different sources for the limestone.
Yes, so one is purely calcium carbonate, and the other one is magnesium carbonate and calcium carbonate.
Okay, so I've got my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the store. I know I need to get my dolomitic lime.
Mm-hmm.
And my soil test says I need 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet.
That's right.
Okay. So I'm loading up the bags. I'm going to go spread it. What time of year should I be worried about doing this?
Realistically, you can do it whenever you want. With you putting down that amount of material, if anybody has a soil test and it comes back and you need lime, you're going to have to put down just a significant amount of material. So really, whenever it fits into your time schedule, the faster it can incorporate with the soil would be ideal. And so we think about when would we have the opportunity to incorporate it with the soil? Well, aeration. We're pulling cores out of the ground. We can apply lime then. That would be probably the most ideal time. And then really any time outside of that would be your second most ideal time.
Okay. So I've aerated or I'm just applying it whenever. I'm putting down 50 pounds worth. Do I need to worry about watering it in? What about, can I go back and add fertilizer at the same time? What can I do? What can't I do?
Yeah, so if you apply fertilizer at the same time, depending on your fertilizer source, it could potentially react with your lime, and therefore it never had the opportunity to react with your soil and help buffer that acidity in the soil. So typically it's recommended, if you're doing lime, stick to lime. If you're doing fertilizer, stick to fertilizer. Don't try to conjoin the two. Even in some instances, lime specifically will make other fertilizer sources like nitrogen less available. So you can cause problems with a lot of loss and volatility by combining something like a lime with urea, for instance. So it's typically not recommended to conjoin the two. When you're applying lime, stick to lime. Definitely water it in because you need to work it into the soil where it can actually work its magic there. And how do you get it into the soil? Water.
Sure.
So, John, we have a treat today.
Okay.
We're going to go to the lab and we are going to take two popular lime products on the market. We're going to take a really fast-acting lime that's super popular in the pro market called SolU-Cal. SolU-Cal is sold as having the same amount of neutralizing power in 8 pounds per 1,000 square feet or even 12 pounds per 1,000 square feet that you would get out of 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet of just a traditional calcitic lime.
Wow.
So what I want to do is I want to perform a backwards titration and we calculate exactly which one truly has the most amount of power to correct acidity in the soil.
Sweet. Let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, right now we're going to prepare a 1 molar solution of sodium hydroxide, and we're going to put it in 200 milliliters of water, so that will be approximately 8 grams of sodium hydroxide. It's a little heavy. Okay, now let's put this into water. We'll let that dissolve. Now, separately, we're gonna put 1 molar hydrochloric acid into this beaker, but first we're gonna put a gram of lime, and to start off, we're gonna start with a gram of SolU-Cal. All right, we got a gram of lime now. So now we're gonna add approximately 25 milliliters of hydrochloric acid into the lime to dissolve it. Now this should have a pretty good reaction because this is an acid-base reaction. The acid being the hydrochloric acid, the base being the calcium carbonate. That's why you see it bubbling. We can see in there, it is not dissolved yet. So we're gonna put this on a hot plate and stir it. And we're gonna turn up the heat a little bit, but not quite to boiling. And then we'll let that sit. All right, so we're gonna transfer the 1 molar solution of sodium hydroxide into here for our titration. All right, so we've got basically 10 milliliters of sodium hydroxide solution here. All right, now let's check on our liming material. That is a good suspension. I'm gonna heat it up just a little bit more here. Again, not quite to boiling. Just to make sure as much is dissolved in there as possible. All right, that's probably a good temperature. It's warm, not boiling. Okay, so we're gonna grab another pipette, and then we're gonna put 5 drops of phenolphthalein indicator in here. One, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Probably going to transfer this to a smaller flask so it's easier to see. So just real simple, we're going to transfer this to a smaller flask so it's easier to see as we titrate. That's good enough. All right, let's set it up and start titrating. So we're going to go drop by drop here until it turns pink for 15 seconds. I'm gonna add water to it so it's a little clearer. I had to add more sodium hydroxide. I went ahead and added some distilled water to make it easier to see. That was actually part of the experiment, was that you could add distilled water. and continue to titrate. So I should have to add somewhere around 25 milliliters of sodium hydroxide. I'm starting to get a little pink color change. Can you see the pink forming in the center of it?
Yes.
Pink for J-Pink. Alright, it's starting to hang on there a little bit. Almost there. Almost. That is, let's see how long that stays. See it? All right, so we'll call this right about good. So that's going to be pretty close to 21, 22 milliliters of sodium hydroxide solution to backward titrate this. Now let's compare it to regular lime. This is a $4.28 bag of regular lime compared to a $20 bag of the other lime. This is not advertised as being anything special other than regular lime. If we look over here, has all your traditional information you need that's going to tell you about how fast it is. Over here it's going to give you your mesh sizes, which tells you basically how fast this will react in the soil. So now let's test this versus something that is advertised as only needed 8 or 12 pounds per thousand, where this obviously would go down depending on your pH of upwards of 1,000 or 2,000 pounds per acre. So let's test how much effective neutralizing power we have out of this product. All right, we got a gram of lime. Let's add our hydrochloric acid. Here's our 25 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. This is diluted hydrochloric acid, so it's not going to melt your skin or clothes off. It's still best not to handle it, but in its diluted form, it's not anywhere near as dangerous. But I would wear gloves. So we'll put this on the hot plate and let it stir. So we'll do just under 100 C. Who was my AP Chem teacher? Mrs. Sue. I think that's when the last time I did a titration was. I definitely didn't do any in college. That's 10 mils, that should be good. Put it back in the vent hood. If you wanted to do this at home, you probably don't need a vent hood, but for safety's sake. And you probably shouldn't touch a hot plate either, but you know. I can definitely go a little hotter than that. Well, I was trying to keep from doing that, but it's okay. Now I'll add 100 milliliters of water to this. I'm gonna put it back on the heat for a little bit. and then I'll add my indicator dye. Looks good. I'll add 5 drops of phenolphthalein. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so I added another 25 milliliters and we'll start adding this as well, and it should become irrevocably pink by the time we get to the end of this. That's it.
It's pink.
And it stayed there for about 15 seconds, so it took exactly the same amount of sodium hydroxide to backwards titrate these 2 limes. The difference is that one is advertised as only needing 8 to 12 pounds per thousand, while the other one is recommended rate based on what your soil test says. So now that we have this information, let's plug it into a formula and get the ENV, or the equivalent neutralizing value as compared to just pure calcium carbonate. And once we have that, we'll compare the two. We know it's going to be the exact same number. Then we can calculate the total neutralizing value based on the cut. Then we can make the determination over whether or not is one worth more than the other.
And we're back. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably really boring actually, but there's a couple of key takeaways there. But before we get into the results and the takeaways and all that fun stuff, John, I want to ask you a question. You go get a soil test and you get your results back and you have to apply 50 pounds, a full bag over 1,000 square feet. You have a 10,000 square foot yard. Therefore, your recommendation is that you have to apply 10 50-pound bags of lime.
To work out.
Exactly, to correct the acidity in your soil. But I've got something special for you.
Okay.
You may need 10 bags of this product, but I've got a line where you're only going to need 1 bag.
To cover the same amount of space?
To cover the same 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
So which one do you want to buy?
Well, I would want to buy the one that I only have to haul the bag once to my car and once to the spreader and apply.
And then be done.
Yeah. Right.
It's like magic almost.
Sure. Now, how much extra is it going to cost me though?
It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but if we compare apples to apples, we have a 50-pound bag of lime that's going to cost $5.
Okay.
We need 10 of them. That's going to be $50 for that 10,000 square feet. Or we can get this 1 bag and it's going to cost $20, but it's going to cover the entire lawn. So you end up saving $30 by going with your 1 bag product versus if you had to go with your 10 bag product.
So is the 10 bag product, is it like not as potent? Is it not as concentrated of a lime? Like in my brain, I'm envisioning it's a distilled lime. It's less limey.
So that's what most people would think, right?
Right.
And let's go ahead and take a look at the label real quick and see what we can unpack on the label.
Okay.
All right, so if we look at the label of the SolU-Cal, we see it is derived from a polycarboxylic acid, has a little bit of humic acid in it, and it has calcium carbonate. Now, that is our $20 bag of lime, right? Those are the active ingredients. We look at our $5 bag of lime, and we look at it, and it's derived from calcium carbonate.
Okay.
So, when we're talking about liming materials, carbonates typically is what we're looking at. That is what's actually reacting with the hydrogen in the soil to buffer the pH, bring it up. So if they're both calcium carbonate, how do you know which one is more powerful than the other? Or the bigger question, John, is it possible for one to be more powerful than the other?
Well, what's the percentages, I guess?
That's just it. One is going to contain 90% calcium carbonate. The other one is going to contain 95% calcium carbonate. Here's the caveat. The cheaper bag of lime contains 95% calcium carbonate.
So then how would it be less effective if it has more calcium? And it's not even that much more calcium carbonate.
You know what, John? We may have unpacked something a little.
Does sound a little squirrely.
It is. And truly what we're looking at is a piece of marketing, bad marketing. And let me explain a little bit about the experiment I did. What I did was I dissolved our liming materials, our two different liming materials, in hydrochloric acid, a strong acid, right?
Sure.
Then what we did was we heated it to make sure every bit of it had dissolved. Then we added a little distilled water, and then we added a little phenolphthalein, which is basically just a pH indicator. And then we dropped a very basic material into this acid that had the calcium carbonate dissolved in it. And really what you're doing is that you're applying enough acid to dissolve all of that calcium carbonate, and it's going to take away the acidity. It's going to bring it back down closer to neutral, right?
Right.
Because the acid has reacted with the calcium carbonate to make it bring your pH up almost neutral. When we drop the sodium hydroxide in it, we're taking the pH even higher. And then when it gets to a certain pH, that means we have exhausted all the free hydrogen left in that solution. And then we can measure just how much power we got out of that lime.
Gotcha.
Once it turns pink.
Right.
So what we ended up seeing there was that we had exactly the same amount of sodium hydroxide added to each one to achieve the same result. So in effect, there was no difference between the power of both of those limes. They're both going to affect soil pH the same way.
So let's pretend that I bought the fancy marketing bag. And I go home, I apply it. Next year rolls around, springtime, pull my soil test. Would I see the results from either lime at that point?
So here's kind of the next little bit of unknown about it, right? Whenever you're looking at a lime label, you're going to see a section on it that says a minimum guaranteed screen analysis. And it'll say how much passes through an 8 mesh, 20 mesh, 40 mesh, 50 mesh. Your 40 mesh and above, that means a smaller particle size. That means it will react faster in the soil. And in fact, a 40 mesh and beyond will react in the soil within the first year.
Okay. So it would be very possible though for me to buy the fancy marketing bag, apply it, and then next year rolls around and I go, well, I still need to apply a little bit more. I'll go get fancy marketing bag, and I get stuck into an endless loop because I have to wait a whole season and I forget how many times I've done it. Or I forget, hey, last time I spent $20, could have spent $50 and had a little bit of a, sweaty workout, but gotten it done in one app.
Yes, so let's think about it this way. If this table was all hydrogen in our soil, right?
Right.
And we add the fancy marketing lime at 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet, we have way more acid than we have in lime, right?
Right.
So how much can this much lime really move the needle when there's this much acid present?
So you're saying I'm not even going to notice a difference?
If you do, it'll be very temporary.
Okay.
Because you just don't have enough liming material to combat the acidity and the free hydrogen.
Or potentially very localized if I don't pull the right spot for my soil test.
Potentially. Now, if you applied 50 pounds per 1,000 square feet, we know it has the same power, but you apply a lot more buffering material across the table. This now can act, it can have a bigger effect on how much it moves the needle, but also how long it lasts. So if you apply just a little bit, then we know you're only going to get a little bit of movement for a little bit of time. But if we apply the proper amount based on what your soil test recommendation is, we can move a lot for a long period of time.
Gotcha. I'm a visual guy, so this helps.
Well, good.
Thank you.
I hit the wrong one.
Good.
Good.
So let's say, and I've applied appropriate amount of lime, and I've done it decent time of year, I've watered it in. What benefits would I see then going into the next season?
This is a great question. There is a popular chart that's out there, and it's going to be called the nutrient availability chart. You can Google it, plug it into your phone, and you'll have it right there. And what you'll see is a list of nutrients required for turfgrass performance, and it will show you at what pH the majority of those nutrients are available to the plant in the soil. So for instance, if you're extremely acidic, you'll see like some of your phosphorus, some of your potassium is no longer available. Your micronutrients typically become available because they're very soluble in acidic soil or soluble in acidic solutions even. But as you move it closer to neutral, you'll see that you have a wider range of availability across all your nutrients, not just individual select ones. So having greater nutrient availability means you're going to have a more efficient plant because it has access to more of those nutrients that are in your soil that haven't been able to have been utilized up to that point.
Gotcha. Now let's say I'm all in. I love doing lawn care. It's my hobby. I don't mind spending extra money. I'm going to go buy the $20 bag. I'm still going to buy enough since we've determined that I still should put out 50 pounds per 1,000. I'm just going to go overboard and spend the extra money. Is there anything that's going to be in that fancier bag that I should be looking for that would actually give me any sort of reward for that?
Maybe, kinda, sorta, no.
No.
Unfortunately, no. You'll notice on the bag that it will contain polycarboxylic acids, and that's really kind of a fancy way of saying that we're using a material to hold everything together when we granulate it. And the most common binder in these scenarios is going to be a lignin sulfonate, which is a byproduct from paper production. And it's an inert binder. And what's interesting about lignin sulfonate is that when you test it for humic acid content, it actually tests relatively high. But in terms of how much viable humic acid is in lignin sulfonate, it's actually really little. So in terms of any kind of performance benefit you're getting out of it, not really anything compared to just your cheap $5 bag of lime.
So I should take my $5 bag of lime, take the savings, and buy a couple beers and watch the sprinklers water in my lime.
Yes, because it is not going to change no matter your lime product. If the active ingredient is calcium carbonate, it's going to require the same amount of lime, whether it's a $20 bag or a $5 bag.
Awesome. Well, I guess I should buy you a couple beers for teaching me the differences. Good.
John, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. Here's your curveball. Are there any active ingredients out there that can move the needle harder and faster than carbonates?
That's a good question. So I don't know of any. I'm no chemist. So if I were to go, let's start over. Is there a chemical that I could just buy off the shelf next to the lime that would do the same thing?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So out there in the marketplace, you'll see hydrated limes or slaked limes or burned limes or quick limes, not fast acting limes, but actual quick limes. And basically these are going to be two different active ingredients. You're going to see calcium oxide and then you'll see calcium hydroxide. Now, calcium oxide can be a little friendlier and you can find it granulated and no real magic craziness is going to happen. But what we will see is that it has a higher calcium carbonate equivalent. What we did when we did the titration was we calculated the calcium carbonate equivalent between those two products. And we came up with about 1, which is 100%, which makes sense because the active ingredient in those products is calcium carbonate. But if we were to use calcium oxide or calcium hydroxide, we may see 137%. Meaning that it's going to have additional neutralizing power beyond what calcium carbonate would have. Or in the instance of calcium hydroxide, it may be even higher. But let me give you a big giant caveat here. Calcium hydroxide is one of the ones that if it reacts with water, it is a very, very exothermic reaction. It generates a lot of heat. And with that heat, a lot of times it can cause catastrophic damage. If you get it on you, and you get your hands wet, it will burn significantly. If you attempted to put it in a sprayer and make a spray application for whatever reason, it's gonna melt your tank. It's gonna melt your hose. Think about that being stuck to your leaves of your grass and what would potentially happen to your grass.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're not gonna have a good time with that.
Nobody's gonna have a good time with it. Your hydrated limes, your calcium oxides, you'll see that sometimes blended with calcium carbonate, create a little bit more powerful lime. In fact, I believe there's actually one available through Bonide. Have you ever heard of Bonide?
I have, yeah.
Bonide, I think, has a hydrated lime out there that is a spreadable product. And that can give you a little bit of an edge in terms of your neutralizing power. But still, at the end of the day, how much difference is it really going to make if you choose one or the other? Really, it comes down to how much money you want to spend and how much money do you need to spend.
And potentially, how messy do you want to get and maybe burn your tank?
Burn your tank or yourself or your lawn. It could be dangerous. You know, at the end of the day, these are, even though they're naturally occurring, they are potentially risky chemicals.
Sure. So I think, me personally, I will stick with the $5 bag of lime. It sounds like less math, less excess applications that I'm going to have to do down the road. And while it's more bags to haul now, it's going to give me the boost I'm looking for, the results I'm looking for.
So this is what we'll do. Later on in the growing season, when things are actively growing and it's warm outside, let's do a little bit of testing, real world, out in the field, where we can have a little bit of control over things. And let's take some of these magic limes and we can take some of these cheap off the shelf limes and just see what kind of real action can we get after applying those. Does that sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, we'll do it.
Cool.
All right, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I hope you learned something. I hope we didn't bore you to death, and we hope we unpacked enough to really make a meaningful difference. I thought you were going to hit the button.
No, I thought it was good. I was just going to smell it.
You can smell it. It's got a funky... It's got a smell. You know, when you said you had smelled it, put your nose over it, I had forgotten really what lime smelled like. And it does. It's got a, I don't know, earthy. Let's unpack it like a bottle of wine. Notes of leather. Let's get in here. Notes of leather, musk.
Start a lime club.
Yeah, what are you picking up? Yeah, this is after a fresh rain.
Maybe some notes of sweat.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Maybe even, it almost smells salty too, doesn't it?
A little salty.
A little salty.
Put it on my potatoes.
Yeah, you want to taste it?
No.
It doesn't taste salty.
No.
Don't do this at home because we don't know what kind of impurities are in here, but really at the end of the day, it's calcium carbonate. It's the exact same active ingredient. Oh, let's talk about household products with calcium carbonate in it. Tums. Rolaids.
Those are just lime?
Yes, just calcium carbonate. And do you know why it works so fast?
Stomach has acids in it?
The stomach has acids in it, and it's ground up into a really, really fine powder before they granulate it. You remember we were talking about the mesh sizes?
Right.
The smaller the mesh size, the faster it'll start to neutralize the acids. So when you chew it up and it breaks that form into that powder and you swallow it, it reacts with all those acids really quickly and will alleviate your stomach discomfort or whatever reason you take.
But still stick with the Tums. Don't eat the lime.
Don't eat this. This is
Okay.
not for human consumption. It smells
Just
like
felt
sweat.
like it would be a bigger, savings. $5 for 50 pounds of Tums.
So we'll try exit number 2. And thank you all for tuning in today. And give them something to look forward to, John.
Guess we're gonna go put some lime out as soon as we've got some good turf that we can throw it on.
Yeah, hey, clue them in on some of the upcoming videos we have.
I feel like maybe we should look at some different products, how well they work against each other. Maybe we can talk some scams. Maybe we can talk some trivia. Maybe we can do some games.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure we can figure out some good videos to bring to the fine folks at home.
Yeah. We might have a little verses coming up. We might have a little the trivias and different things. Also, a couple of things we're going to be doing too. And if you would like to be a part of this, feel free to reach out to us and we can put something together to make it a reality. I'm going to be working with a couple guys this year where we take a look at their soil tests and actually turn that into an actionable program to treat their lawn. And if you want to be a part of that, you're more than welcome to be a part of it. Reach out to us at thegrassfactory@gmail.com and we'll get something scheduled and set up to do it. And just understand we'd like to do it on video for the content purposes because it's difficult to think of different ideas through the days. So we can drink bourbon and do it at the same time. It's an idea.
Might get a little...
It's definitely gonna get squirrely. You gotta watch out for this guy. Okay, we'll close it for real. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you again in the next one.
We'll see you on the next one.